Welcome everybody. It's really great to see so many of you. Thank you so much for joining us for today's Izzy Project Early Insights webinar. I'm Naomi Delap. I'm Birth Companions Director, and I've already asked you to introduce yourselves in the chat. If you just joined us, it would be really great to know who you are, what organisation or perspective you're joining us from. And I think we're ready to get going. Okay, so for those of you who don't know us, Birth Companions is a national charity supporting pregnant women, mothers and their babies who are living in very difficult and complex situations. And that involves mothers in contact with the criminal justice system, refugee, asylum seeking and undocumented women and their children, and women who might be separated or at risk of being separated from their baby through children's social care proceedings. The majority or the vast majority of mothers and babies who we support, their lives are often shaped by deep-rooted social issues that include poverty, sexism and racism. And all too often we know that they're not given the support they need and are actually treated unfairly. So at Birth Companions, to address those problems, we deliver specialist services to support women's lives in the here and now. We work with partners to shape national law, policy and guidance to improve the care provided by services systems and ensure that women's rights are upheld. And throughout all of this, women with lived experience are at the heart of the work that we do. After women have been through our services, they can join our lived experience team, and we offer training and paid consultancy opportunities to shape Birth Companions' work and our sort of internal governance, but also the work of other organisations to improve the care of women and their babies. So, leading on from that, I'm really thrilled to hand over now to Tuesday Moncrief. I'm going to let her introduce herself and the Izzy Project. Tuesday, over to you.
Hi, I'm Tuesday and I'm honoured to be a Birth Companions trustee and a member of the Lived Experience Advisory Board for the Izzy Project. The Izzy Project offers specialist relationship-led support to women living or giving birth in Hackney who are at risk or experience separation from their baby shortly after birth. It's named in loving memory of a child whose mum had been a huge part of Birth Companions for many years. The Izzy Project was co-designed in 2020 in collaboration with women with lived experience of involvement from children's social care and professionals from across Hackney. The co-design process ensured that the voices and the insights of those who have already directly faced these challenges are at the heart of shaping the support and services we provide. When I was invited to contribute to the co-design and ongoing development of the Izzy Project, it was an easy yes. Being a part of this project means standing alongside a group of incredible women who have lived through the profound challenges of having their children removed and navigating social care involvement. This project is deeply personal to me, as I know how intense, traumatic and overwhelming this experience can be for a mother, how unprepared she often feels. And at the same time, I can recognise the immense pressures on social care and the heavy caseloads and the systematic limitations that make it difficult for them to provide the level of emotional and practical support that mothers in these circumstances so desperately need. My hope for the future is that the councils, social services, the NHS and the government will see the immense value in the specialist support of the Izzy Project that it brings, not as a replacement for the statutory services, but as a vital, independent complement to them. By learning from the insights we gather through the Izzy Project, we can enrich the support available in the community and acknowledge areas where the additional care is needed. Most importantly, I hope that throughout Izzy, regardless of the final outcome, women will feel more empowered, more informed, and truly supported at one of the most critical moments in their lives. Looking ahead for the future, my hope my hope is that the approach to the support taken in Izzy Project will continue to grow beyond Hackney. There are incredible practices like this all over the country, and my hope is together we can support the development of a national approach to support for mothers and babies with social care involvement during the 1001 days from the conception to a child's second birthday, ensuring they receive all the support and care that they deserve during this uniquely challenging time. And I'll hand it back to Naomi.
Thanks so much, Tuesday. So as Tuesday has said, we went through a very extensive co-design process in order to shape Izzy and what it became. We were really fortunate to receive funding from North East London ICB and the National Lottery Community Fund to pilot the Izzy Project for 4 years. And we started the project in May last year. So we are coming up to, 10 months in, something like that. There is a formal learning and development element of the service. So we are working we are going to be working with an academic partner to do an evaluation. But we also felt that we were learning so much right from the outset that we wanted to share this as we went along and to benefit from the input of all of our stakeholders and partners in that iterative process. So as I say, the service has now been up and running for 10 months. So in a minute, I'm going to hand you over to Epi, Helen and Lauren, our Izzy team, to talk about what we've learnt so far. Just before I do that, please do share some questions that you have in the chat box. We're going to have a question and answer session at the end. Ooh, Annabelle. You've got a question. Before I hand over to Izzy, do you want to, yes, what's your question, Annabelle?
Just quickly, the chat box isn't working.
Oh.
It says that chat is only available during the meeting, so I don't know if anybody will have questions. I won't be able to pop them in the chat.
That is really strange. I think the chat box has been working for other people, has it, Catherine?
Yeah, I can see messages coming through in the chat.
Maybe it's just me then.
Introducing themselves.
What you can do, you can also just put your hand up at the end and share questions that way. So just scribble the question down if you can't share it in the chat box, and then we'll just take questions from you at the end. Hope that works for everybody.
Yeah. Sorry, that might be a quirk of the Teams webinar setup. Sorry if other people can't access the chat box, but yeah, we can unmute you whenever we need to. Yeah. So just put your hand up.
Okay. Hold on to your questions. Okay. I'm going to hand over to Epi, Lauren, and Helen, the Izzy team.
Hello everyone, my name's Epi, I'm the Community Services Manager. So I'm just going to give you a very brief overview of our service so far. So our Izzy Project coordinators work one-to-one with women throughout their pregnancy, throughout birth and in the first year of their baby's life. They provide practical and emotional support and information to help mothers navigate children's social care, family justice and maternity care systems, as well as wider services such as housing, immigration, public health. And they do this from a standpoint of understanding and responding to inequality and inequity within social and healthcare contexts, and always with a trauma-informed, rights-based and women-centred approach. So our coordinators work alongside but independently of midwives, social workers and other health and social care services and professionals. They help women access the full range of support services available to them in Hackney, and help to ensure that their voices are heard and their needs are understood. So as Naomi said, we're now about 10 months into service delivery, and our caseload has been steadily increasing over this time. So in May last year, we worked with 3 women initially, which increased to 7 in July, 9 by September, and then by the end of last year, we had worked with 15 women in total. Our referral pathways are becoming more and more robust. We receive referrals predominantly from social workers within Hackney Children's Social Care and specialist midwives at the Homerton Hospital in Hackney, but we also work very closely with other services such as Ocean, Perinatal Mental Health Service and Pause Charity. In terms of some kind of key successes to highlight over the last few months, We've seen an increasingly effective collaboration and information sharing between health and social care practitioners across Hackney, which I think our partners are going to talk to you a bit more about in a minute, with our Izzy Project coordinators playing a really pivotal role in strengthening these links. Crucially, the women we support, they choose and say what it is they need from the Izzy Project, and we are responsive to this. And the project continues to showcase the intrinsic value of the voluntary sector being able to support new mothers in this way. In terms of kind of some of the systemic challenges we've come up against in recent months, the Izzy Project is, for now at least, a Hackney-based service. But obviously people's lives are very rarely confined to one geographical area, and particularly amongst the women that we're working with, many are forced to move from their local area mid-support or mid-pregnancy due to, for example, housing issues or domestic violence. And so, as you can imagine, this has created kind of myriad challenges for us. Another difficulty that we've come up against is that several of the women we've supported have had public law outline hearings scheduled at very late notice, which has meant that it's not always been possible for our coordinators to attend and support with them. Obviously, we recognise that scheduling decisions are largely out of our control, but our hope is that as the project evolves and our capacity hopefully grows, we're going to be able to mitigate against this challenge and be with every woman we're working with at every hearing. Lastly, we've also observed a little bit of confusion at points around the purpose and nature of the project and the role that our coordinators play at various statutory meetings, whether that's child protection conferences, professionals meetings, where they've been asked to produce reports or feed into scoring around a woman's progress in relation to children's social care requirements. So in response to that, we're in the process of developing guidance to disseminate to social workers as well as independent reviewing officers and judges to clarify what our role is there. Lastly, in terms of innovations, in response to some of the difficulties we've experienced in collaborating with some social work teams outside of Hackney, we've been proactively reaching out and establishing links with key contacts within teams in neighbouring boroughs, and we're really hopeful that this is going to kind of support service delivery going forward. We're also at the moment in producing a infographic, which is a resource that we're going to be able to share with referrers and women being referred into the Izzy Project, which will help them kind of conceptualise what we do and why, and how our coordinators would work with them in and amongst all the other professionals involved in their life. And lastly, our Lived Experience Advisory Board have been working on an introductory letter to give to women when they're first referred into the Izzy Project, which explains the purpose of the project and offers hope, compassion and solidarity. So yeah, that's it from me. I'm going to hand over to Lauren now, Lauren Shirley, who's one of our coordinators who works directly with the women, who's going to reflect on some kind of key early learnings and insights from our service so far.
Hi, thanks Epi. Yeah, as Epi said, so I'm Community Perinatal Services Coordinator and one of two coordinators on the Izzy Project. And just going to take us through some of the key insights from the project so far. So, as we've kind of already touched on as well, the Izzy Project is a Hackney-based service, but it's become increasingly evident over the months that we've been doing it, particularly that women's lives are rarely confined to the borough of Hackney, and therefore borough-centric thinking potentially can lead to failures and gaps in the support that is provided. They might have been moved to other boroughs due to domestic abuse, housing issues, or is often the case if they're under local authority of one borough, but receiving their maternity care through another. And so there's a kind of complexity around a service that only caters to one borough, and we work to support women to kind of travel between those and to navigate the sometimes disjointed systems and services that exist between those boroughs. Another insight is that a significant amount of care and planning is needed around a first contact, which often includes needing some insight and guidance from the referrers that first kind of put our women in touch with us. And many of the women have a huge number of professionals already involved, which can be very overwhelming. And many find it hard to trust new people as well. And so building up trust takes time. And so that's why a very women-led, considered, flexible approach is needed. Another insight linked to that is that due to this, the initial kind of engagement around that can be quite lengthy, and that's why kind of keeping open, being quite flexible with our approach of working with women is important to build up that trust and for them to be able to see the value in our support, and potentially them deciding not to engage and not to have the support from the Izzy Project, but that's where being women-led, and that possibly further down the line, depending on capacity, they might be able to be supported at another point. The majority of women we've worked with have given birth before their estimated due date, which highlights the pattern that although we're not surprised to see it was reflective of national data, it does highlight a need for timely referrals during a woman's pregnancy where possible, and as well as kind of consideration from our side about how we effectively predict and manage capacity. The necessary preparation for and support around separations is very intensive. Supporting women in the run-up to, at the moment of, and after separation requires a lot of really intense work, a lot of time and focus to be dedicated to one woman. And because of that, caseloads have to remain quite small to allow for this level and intensity of support, and also for the unpredictability of if and when separation might occur. And lastly, linked to that, although strong planning around a separation doesn't always play in practice, we're focusing on relationship building to be able to overcome this. So engaging in extensive discussions and planning with key professionals involved in a woman's care, and how to carry out separations and removals of infants in the most trauma-informed way possible. And although there appears to be good collaboration, understanding, some of these kind of plans don't always play out. And so kind of continuing to put more work into building relationships and raising awareness of our role amongst wider midwifery and social work teams is important. I'm going to hand over to Helen, the other coordinator of the project, who is going to share some details how we support women through a composite narrative.
Hi everybody, I'm Helen Benson and I'm the Senior Coordinator for the Perinatal Services Project. The composite narrative that I'm going to share is an amalgamation of the experiences of multiple women we have supported by the Izzy Project during the first 10 months of service delivery. It is intended to be illustrative of a range of different women's experiences and needs without depicting any one individual's story, allowing us to protect the privacy and confidentiality of the mothers and babies we've supported and continue to support. So Alba was referred to the Izzy Project by her midwife at 27 weeks pregnant with her 4th child. Her older 3 children were not in her care and were living with paternal grandparents or in foster care. Her unborn baby was on a child protection plan, and children's social care were making it clear that they intended to remove her baby from her care at birth, as they still had serious concerns about her ability to keep her baby safe from harm. Alba was determined to retain care of this baby and felt strongly that she should be given the opportunity to be assessed on an MBU. She was under the care of Children's Services in a neighbouring borough, but had recently transferred her care to the Homerton Hospital in Hackney, as she was unhappy with how she had been treated at another hospital during her previous birth. Initially, Alba was very reluctant to work with birth companions. She felt she had too many professionals, services and appointments to engage with already, and didn't feel she could cope with any additional contacts. We told her we absolutely understood this and made sure she had all the information she needed in case she changed her mind later or just had any questions. Over the next few weeks, Alba reached out tentatively to us a few times, asking simple questions or just checking that she could still contact us if she ever needed to. We were able to slowly build up a trusting relationship with Alba via WhatsApp, always making it clear that all support would be on her terms. Eventually, Alba asked if the Izzy Project could support her at the birth, as she wasn't sure if her partner would be there. We worked gently with Alba over the next few weeks, helping her to think about and write down her birth choices and making sure she had all the practical items that she would need for her hospital bags. Towels, underwear, sanitary items, baby grows, a knitted baby hat and a baby box from our partners at Pram Depot with essential items for her new baby and for herself. We attended all core group meetings and child protection conferences as a support for Alba, making it clear from the outset to Alba and the independent reviewing officer that we would not be taking part in any kind of decision making in relation to outcomes for Alba and her baby. Our role was purely a supportive one. In meetings, we engaged in a huge amount of advocacy work, keeping channels of information open with the professionals involved in Alba's care and ensuring that everything was being communicated to Alba in a way that she could process and understand. We worked intensively with the midwives caring for Alba and the social workers involved to get plans in place for how to support Alba if a separation was to take place, including things like where the removal would take place, who would be in the room with her, what each person's role would be and how she would be spoken to, and the pace at which social workers would take the necessary steps towards leaving with her baby. Alba was supported at birth by a very experienced volunteer birth companion and was supported to begin breastfeeding in the hospital shortly after the birth. Due to uncertainty about timings for the next steps in care proceedings, Alba remained in hospital for approximately 2 weeks after her baby was born and was visited regularly by ourselves and our volunteer birth companions, who offered love, care and support around things like breastfeeding, safe sleeping, washing and changing baby and staying healthy. Alba was also very grateful to have the support of her 2 named specialist midwives throughout this time. During this time, there had been minimal communication and updates from the social worker to ourselves or Alba, which is an ongoing challenge when working with social care services outside of Hackney. Eventually, Alba was told that she would be placed in a parenting assessment centre. Alba was pleased with this arrangement, though it meant another big move for her as the placement was in another borough. Alba continues to be supported by us during this time in the centre. She is thriving there, and there's a lot of hope that through the intensive support of the birth centre staff, MBU centre staff, social workers and the Izzy Project, Alba will be able to maintain care of her baby. I'm going to hand back over to Epi.
Thank you, Helen and Lauren, very much for all the incredible support that you deliver to the women accessing the Izzy Project and for sharing those insights. I'm now going to hand over to some of our partners within Hackney to reflect on their involvement in the project. So we're going to hear from Claire and Catherine, who work within the Family Intervention Support Service, and Annabelle, who is a public health midwife and a specialist midwife in drug and alcohol based at Homerton Hospital.
Hi, thanks, Epi. So, yeah, my name's Claire Adamson. I'm a service manager in Hackney Children's Services, specifically in the assessment service, and I work along closely with my colleague Catherine, who is in the child protection service, so the team that do the plans and the court proceedings. So we've been involved with birth companions in the Izzy Project from the co-design stage, and I suppose what really became clear quite early on is it really sort of addresses the gap that is in the support that's needed for these women whilst they're experiencing children's social care intervention. And alongside that, housing continues to think about how complex our systems and processes can be to people that are not working in them. So it really provides that benefit of a key worker for someone who's experiencing a social work intervention. I think probably what we thought about is that particularly when decisions are made around pre-proceedings or care proceedings, they can feel like there's a split where the social worker very much is focused on the baby or the child and how a woman can experience that. And I think Izzy fills that gap where the women have worker that is really for them and advocating for them and supporting them, when it can feel like, as I said, there's a split when the social workers are very focused on the child well-being. And then just simply with the Izzy Project workers being able to provide the time and attention for these women that just social workers are unable to because of our caseloads and the work that we're doing. I suppose things that we're thinking about locally, how it's changed. I think it's given social workers an opportunity to really think and practice in a more trauma-informed way. It's really hard not to engage in this work when it's really brought it to the table and thinking about women's experiences. I think Catherine and I think about that we may not change the outcome ultimately sometimes, but I think we can confidently say that it's changing women's experiences of going through this process. And then thinking about opportunities for the future, I think there's ongoing work to do with the judiciary around Izzy Project and birth companions and how that fits with once we're in court. Linking with the Hope Boxes, so another project that we're very heavily involved in Hackney, thinking about women's experiences, and also then thinking about how this work fits with Pause as well, another project. So yeah, I think probably that's where we're at, and just ultimately we've created this community in Hackney of practitioners, like the relationships that we have now with midwifery and other stakeholders in this work. It's really this kind of, as I say, there's this little community of people now that we know each other and we're talking and hopefully planning and thinking about this work.
Thank you, Claire. I think we do have Catherine Maudsley and Annabelle Flack from Hackney also on the call if you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So hi, everybody. My name's Annabelle and I'm one of the specialist midwives at Homerton. And I'm also a public health midwife, but I mainly provide care to women who have historical or current issues with drugs or alcohol. So most of my women, it's quite unusual if I have a lady who doesn't have significant involvement with social care. So most of my ladies are referred to Izzy Project. And I think the Izzy Project has been so valuable for us midwives. I can't imagine going forward now without the Izzy Project, mainly because it applies, Helen and Lauren applied trauma-informed approach to our ladies, which is crucial with reducing, the feelings of judgment and stigmatization that a lot of our ladies have experienced. And it's been brilliant to see that the support that's given on the ward, because us midwives and social workers don't have the time to be there, for the amount of time that the Izzy coordinators can be. We sooner find out if women are feeling stigmatized or judged, and we can escalate these concerns to the sisters on the ward and really improve practice to reduce these things happening. I think the Izzy Project can really empower women to use their voices as well. And I completely agree with you, Claire, in that obviously the social workers' focus is mainly on the baby, but then the Izzy Project can really make women feel supported and cared for. Midwives can only provide support to women 28 days after they've given birth. So to know that they have that ongoing support is just amazing. So I think a lot of our ladies also have mistrust with services due to historical involvement or, previous traumatic experiences, whether that be with social care or the NHS. So to have the Izzy Project, which sits outside of those services, is crucial in kind of rebuilding that trust that women can have in services and therefore encourage their engagement and ensure that they get the best care possible. Again, completely agree with you, Claire. The collaboration between maternity and social care is amazing since Izzy Project. I've been in this role, in a different role, at a different trust for years, and I've never had so many meetings of social care and other services, and it's great to have that collaboration. So yeah, I think the feedback from the women as well about the Izzy Project just goes to show how invaluable it's been. And yeah, I think it's amazing. Also with the hope boxes, yeah, it can just really empower women and really kind of, you know, improve their experiences going through such a challenging, such a vulnerable time. To have that ongoing support with somebody is great.
Thank you so much, Annabelle. I mean, I'd welcome all our Hackney partners to kind of chip in the Q&A discussion later as well, if there's questions that come up that you have your own take on. I'm just going to pick it up from here. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Kirsty Kitchen. I'm head of policy at Birth Companions, and I just wanted to sort of build from where we've got to in reflecting on the insights from the Izzy Project so far, to think about how this relates to our wider work around children's social care involvement. At Birth Companions, women having involvement from children's social care has been a sort of primary concern from the very outset. It's a common thread across all aspects of our work, which spans women who have criminal justice involvement, women who are refugee or asylum seeking or undocumented migrants, and more generally women who experience acute forms of disadvantage and inequity during their journey through pregnancy and early motherhood. And for those of you that don't have sort of a good understanding of Birth Companions already, we are an organisation that applies, certainly in policy and research terms, a real focus on the 1,001 days. So that's the period from the point of conception up to a child's second birthday. And certainly social care involvement is a key concern for the vast majority of the women that we work with. I think it's helpful to mention that it's not only women who are very likely to or who do actually have social care intervention, who we're mindful of here. Those are the women that we're working with in the Izzy Project. But more generally, we need to be very conscious of the fear that so many women hold as they enter into contact with the health system during pregnancy and early motherhood around that social care involvement. As Annabelle just said, really, that there's really significant fears for a lot of women, many of whom may not come under social care services at any point, but it's already having an impact on the way that they approach services, the way that they share the nature of what they're dealing with in their lives, and their ability to form relationships of trust with professionals. So we need to kind of hold that in mind as well when thinking about the bigger picture. And that's why we created the Birth Charter for women who with social care involvement, which we launched in July 2023, sort of to recognise that whole spectrum really of needs and concerns. And that, for those of you who don't know it already, sets out 14 principles of care, a sort of framework really for thinking about what best care looks like for these women, and it dovetails very neatly with the guidance that was published by the Born Into Care project shortly before. I'll let you read that in your own time, and I think Catherine will probably be able to pop a direct link to the Birth Charter into the chat. But essentially, it spells out the fact that women should receive support while they have social care involvement that is specialist and continuous during pregnancy, birth, and early motherhood, that is woman-centred, holistic, and culturally appropriate, that's trauma-informed and trauma-responsive, that's equitable, and that responds to their specific needs before, during, and after separation from their baby, if that's what happens. It also sets out the fact that women should be helped to give their babies the very best start in life through support from all services as early as possible, appropriate mental health support, having their birth preferences respected, appropriate support in hospital before, during, and after birth, having opportunities to bond with their baby, and being able to retain or regain care of their baby wherever that is possible. And lastly, the last 3 principles of the Charter focus on women's rights being upheld through having helped to understand and engage with every aspect of their involvement with the social care system and the family justice system, access to independent advocacy support, and clear ways to express concerns, challenge inaccuracies, and make complaints about unfair or poor practice. So I think given everything that the Izzy Project team have shared today, you can see that Izzy was very much built on the principles of the Birth Charter, and it's embedding an approach that we hope to be able to formalise and roll out more generally in the form of a joint health and social care pathway for women with social care involvement. That was a key recommendation of the Birth Charter. It's something that we've been advocating for a long time now, and it's actually a piece of work that we are at the start of developing ourselves with support from a range of partners, including those in central government. So more news on that soon, hopefully, and we'll be getting in touch with many of you on this call to hopefully feed into that piece of work to develop a national pathway. I just wanted to recognise the fact that there is a huge amount of brilliant work going on around the country in this space. I'm delighted, as are many colleagues, to have been able to play a part in lots of conversations to help shape the work of others, but also to learn from the work that is already underway through many others. And there's lots of you on the call who are doing fantastic things. But something that I have heard and others have heard very consistently while we've had those conversations with those working locally and regionally to shape the best possible provision for these women, is that what's really needed is more national focus and more national leadership. So that's what we're hoping that the pathway might be able to develop. But we're also having a lot of conversations with Department for Education and Department of Health and Social Care, NHS England, the Ministry of Justice and others, to make sure that there is a focus on women who have social care involvement in that critical 1,001 days in all relevant policies, wherever they sit. It's an area that hasn't really received the attention that it needs to. For me, the fact that NICE CG 110 guideline on complex social factors in pregnancy and maternity care doesn't make any reference to this group of women is kind of a really strong illustration of that gap that we need to fill across the board, really. So I'm very hopeful that if we and many of you on this call can push for a more sort of consistent and coordinated national focus on these issues, that all of the great work being done regionally and locally can then go from strength to strength. The Izzy Project is funded for 4 years. We don't know yet what will happen at the end of that 4 years. Obviously, we'd love to make that a long-term sustainable project if funding permits, but we have to be realistic. And we would love to have an Izzy Project in every part of the country, but that's never going to happen. It's also not necessary because there are others doing equally brilliant work in other spots. But what we do need is to ensure that level of consistency, that equity and that fairness means that all women who can and should benefit from this type of support do. And so that's really the sort of next job and the big priority for me and my team at Birth Companions. That said, if anyone's sitting on funding for an Izzy Project in your area, we would love to hear from you and have a conversation with you. But at that point, I think it's probably a good time to open up for questions and discussion. Catherine, I think you've been keeping an eye on the chat, so I'll hand over to you to manage Q&As. And if people also want to just, raise things as we go along, then please do raise your hands and we can come to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Kirsty. Yes, so I've been keeping an eye on your questions in the chat please do keep putting them in the chat, or just pop your hand up and we can unmute you if you'd like to ask it out loud. So the first question, I think, well, there's a couple of questions I'll kind of group together for you, Epi, that are kind of around so some of the sort of practicalities of the service. So a little bit about the criteria we have for referrals, and if there's sort of a write-up anywhere of the support that we offer to women through the Izzy Project that can be shared with people in other areas.
Thank you, Catherine. Yeah, sure. So in terms of referral criteria, at the moment, obviously, we're only funded to work within Hackney. So the women accessing the service need to be either living or birthing in the London Borough of Hackney at point of referral. And the project is designed obviously specifically for women with children's social care involvement. So unborn baby or baby needs to be on either a child protection plan or in pre-proceedings. So yeah, they're kind of the two key criteria. But otherwise, you know, we work with women experiencing disadvantage, often kind of intersecting disadvantage. So whilst a lot of the women accessing the project kind of have similar lived experiences and haven't encountered similar difficulties in their lives, each woman's journey is obviously completely unique, and they come with an individual set of kind of circumstances and support needs and wants from the project. But yeah, they're kind of the two key. So at least child protection and living and or birthing in Hackney. In terms of the support offered, we have, so there's an information page on our website which is specifically about the Izzy Project, which kind of outlines the support that we can provide, and there's a link to a referral form on there as well. But just to talk about it here, perhaps just briefly, I mean, again, it's very much women-led. So the support one woman might access from the Izzy Project could be quite different to the support another woman might access. Generally speaking, it's about advocacy. It's around helping them understand and navigate what's happening in terms of kind of children's social care involvement. It's about emotional support. Often we help with practical items for mum and baby. We offer antenatal education and resources. We can offer support at a birth, and everything that kind of comes with the postnatal period that a woman might need as well. But as I say, it can vary from one woman to another, and it can equally be that, you know, at certain points, what a woman needs from us is quite a lot, and the support required is quite intensive, and then it might drop away for a while for whatever reason. And so it's very it's an extremely reactive service, and we are very responsive to what women are telling us they need and want from us.
Thanks, Epi. I've just put the link in the chat as well for the Izzy Project website. So all the documents related to it are up there, and the link to the referral form. This might be another one for you, Katie, but others might want to jump in as well. This is from Katie. Has the Izzy Project encountered any issues with women feeling that they must engage with support due to a fear that declining might impact their social care assessments? So that's sort of a feeling around obligation or potential repercussions. Is that something that's been coming up?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly something that we're aware of, you know, that women feel the need to kind of play the game, jump through hoops in certain situations. But what I think sets us apart very distinctly from other services involvement in a woman's life is that we are not a statutory service, and crucially, engagement with the project is entirely voluntary. It has no bearing really on, you know, decision making that happens at a statutory level. It's just about a woman accessing support from us if that's what she feels she needs and that's what she feels she wants. So no, I think, you know, Helen and Lauren are coordinators, and to answer someone else's question, we only have 2 coordinators on the project currently. They do an incredible job when they first start working with a woman to lay all of that out really clearly, and in a very trauma-informed way, that we are led by them. Our support is very paced, it's very gentle, and no options whatsoever. And a woman can start working with us and then decide along the line that it's not for her for whatever reason, and that's of course fine. So no, I don't think we have come up against much of that because of the work we do to make our role very clear from the outset. Yeah. Thanks, Epi. To jump in, anybody else? If they'd like.
Yeah, I think it's also important how it's kind of explained to the women when they're offered a referral. So I think once you explain to women that there's no association with the NHS or social care, they are solely there for you, and to offer you support all on your terms, and then they're quite eager to engage, really. But our women do have so many appointments with so many different services that I suppose at first they might be quite reluctant to then make appointments. When they see how flexible the coordinators are and work around them, yeah, then I think they're quite quick to engage after that.
Thanks, Annabelle. I think that came through really strongly in Alba's narrative as well, that Helen read us out. That kind of the initial engagement part can be tricky, but once those things have been set out for women, it really does seem to work. So we have a question from Mary. Can the women's families and friends be involved in the project? And if so, how have they been involved? Yeah, that's an interesting one. I don't know whether one of the coordinators wants to kind of jump in, maybe with an example they might have. Certainly families are involved in various ways. Helen, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, so depending on the woman's situation, we might have a partner who will support with, if they're living together, we'd support them in the meetings as well, or we're there with both the couple. Practical items, working with the other partner as well. At birth as well, birth support, if the partner's there, or any family or friends, then we'll obviously support them too. Always the main focus is on the woman. And sometimes if parents are also going to meetings, then we're sort of there to support everybody that's part of that woman's life. But obviously the main focus is the woman. So again, each woman is so different with what possible support she might get. Sometimes just talking to another member of family who don't understand what we are and who we are. Often they're very defensive and very concerned about this person who's now working with their daughter or their best friend or their sister. So again, sometimes it's just having a really reassuring conversation with them just to explain what we are, who we are, and what we can and can't do. Yeah, so we're yeah, absolutely, we work with them.
Thanks, Helen. I've seen a question here from Catherine. How long can you work with a woman? And I believe that is up to a year postnatal, but I'll let the coordinators jump in if there's more to add to that, more detail. It's
for the year up until the baby's first birthday.
Yeah, thank you, Helen. And a question here from Annabelle. I'm sorry if I missed this. Is there external evaluation support to help capture the positive outcomes for the women supported, as well as the improvements to local connections, communications between services? Kirsty, is that one you would like to take?
Yes, happy to take that. I mean, just to add to the previous point about how long we can work with women, it is currently a year after birth, or up to the child's first birthday. But ideally, in future iterations of this service, we would love to have the funding and the flexibility to work with women up to their child's second birthday. So it is a service that is sort of running across that 1,001 days. And there's lots of reasons for that, including the fact that the anniversary of your child's removal, which might be fairly shortly after their first birthday, for instance, could be a particularly difficult time for women, or that women might reach a point in that first postnatal year where they feel that they don't need support, but then their needs might change in that sort of 12 to 24 months postnatal period. So that's a sort of long-term goal that I just wanted to mention. Yes, in terms of external evaluation, we're in the process at the moment of agreeing a sort of evaluation model for the Izzy project that will potentially dovetail with broader work around children's social care involvement and provision for pregnant women and new mothers in that space. But yes, we've got a commitment to formally evaluating both the support that women receive through the service, but also the impact that the service has on the local sort of systems and landscapes, and then how it informs bigger picture conversations as well. And that's a sort of core part of the model.
Thanks, Kirsty. That's all the questions I've spotted in the chat. I saw a couple of people had hands up that have gone down, but if you would like to put your hand back up, I can unmute you to ask anything. I'm sorry, I've forgotten the names of who that was. If there's anything else you'd like to ask anybody that's spoken today.
While people do that, Catherine, I was just going to pick up on the point that Katie raised in the chat about fears that women, any issues that women might have with a sense that declining support might impact their social care assessments. And I think that, and that goes back to the point that I was sort of trying to make about situating this in the broader context of women's fears, whether those are well-founded or not, about things, and how difficult it is for women to engage with new services and new organisations amidst quite a lot of fear and mistrust. And I think that's something that our coordinators are doing kind of excellent work around. I don't know if Helen, Lauren, there's anything that you particularly wanted to add on that point. But otherwise, yeah, I think it's a critical kind of part of that trauma-informed and very woman-centred approach to the initial conversations, and keeping the door open for women while they decide what they would like to do or not to do. I've just also seen a comment pop up from Catherine about the Pause project, and we have absolutely been working with Pause in Hackney around support for these women. I don't know if the project team want to reflect on how important that relationship is in terms of other voluntary services and provision in the same area. Epi?
Yeah, I can touch on that. I don't know if we have any of our Pause partners. Mary on the call? No, perhaps not. But yeah, absolutely. Several of the women we've supported since May last year have also been involved with Pause. They're one of our referral partners, and we meet regularly to kind of discuss caseload and how we're working with women. I think we kind of offer a complementary service, I suppose. We work with a very kind of similar group of women in a lot of ways, but the way in which we work is perhaps slightly different. And obviously, you know, there's a set of kind of criteria, I suppose, that women working with Pause would need to meet that we don't stipulate. But absolutely, we collaborate, and we the communication, I think, between respective coordinators is really impactful. And yeah, over the last 10 months of the project, I think we've done some really brilliant work with Pause. The question was, we have the Pause project, these two services linked together to provide a wider, could we link together? Perhaps, yeah, who knows, going forward. But yes, certainly currently, we're working really effectively to support women in a slightly different way, but kind of coming around a woman to offer that kind of really holistic care that's missing in a lot of, for a lot of women. Yeah.
Thanks, Epi. So we are about 3 minutes before past. I'm going to unless anybody wants to pop up their hand for a last question, I'll hand back to you, Kirsty, to wrap us up.
Thanks, Catherine. And beautifully, Annabelle has just made a point in the chat that it's something that I was going to mention in terms of wrapping us up. So that's very, very neat, and I'm very impressed. So just before I mention that, I suppose a thank you to everyone that sort of pitched in today. A huge thank you to the Lived Experience advisory group that have shaped the co-design of the Izzy project and continue to shape the way that the service is delivered and evolves. And thanks for Tuesday for sharing a little bit of about her sort of involvement in that group. We couldn't do it without them, and it wouldn't look how it does without their input. So special thanks to them. In terms of where we go next with this work, we'll be absolutely keeping in touch with all of you. I hope you're all happy to hear more from us, and to invite your colleagues to get involved in the work that we're doing around improving the support for women with social care involvement in the 1001 days. We're expecting quite a lot of developments in this space in coming months, so we will keep you posted on those. One of the particular areas that we're interested to explore is the overlap between women who are care experienced themselves, who go on to have social care involvement for their own pregnancies and their own infants, as Annabelle has flagged in the chat. And I know that there are colleagues from Project Unity in Wales on the call who are providing some great support around that loop, really, through from care experience as a child and then care experience as a parent. I think that's a really interesting and challenging cycle for us to think about, and we've certainly seen care experience come up in for some of the women that we have supported. So more work there, some work particularly around the overlaps between the criminal justice system and children's social care involvement as well, and there's lots of information on Birth Companion's website about that dual contact, including a spotlight paper that we published last year. So be ready to kind of be part of the ongoing conversations if you're keen to. I hope we won't bombard you, but I also hope that we can maintain some momentum and help lead the way in this space in partnership with all of you who are doing excellent work. So thanks for joining us today. We will wrap up, and Catherine will share the slides and the recording when it's ready, and feel free to pass those on to other people. But thank you.